is a PhD holder from Cornell University, USA, in the stream of Micro ElectroMechanical Systems. Okay, ये बोलने में मुझे इतना दिक्कत आ रहा है. He has done PhD, imagine. Okay, he has a bachelor degree from mechanical engineering in IIT Madras. Okay, so strong basic, and then PhD has done from USA. So after doing all this, studying a lot, he has worked with GE, General Electronic. He has worked there as a scientist or a researcher in GE, New York. Okay. After that, he left that job and came to Chennai, and he started his own startup, embedded with Powergear. Okay. He is now doing research and development R&D business for his clients. So he will gonna talk about how to innovate, what are the importance of innovations, how or where India is standing in innovations, how to convert ideas into business, what are the cost, how it, what are the budgets. He's gonna talk about that. So if I talk about his Hull out from USA, okay, he's a if you are from corporate and you know what is Six Sigma, he has already a black belt of Six Sigma. Okay, guys, it's not chota mota kam. Six Sigma in black belt will be something in another level. Okay, so he's very humble to join us live to give you something to learn him. You have to be there in this live till end. Okay, so take a pen and paper, write it down, whatever your takeaway, and if you have questions, if you want to ask him a question, he is available. You can type your questions in the comment section. I will be able to ask him the same question, and he will be able to answer. Me guys, he is not available in any platform. You can approach him. Of course, you can approach him through Powergear and through his LinkedIn profile. Other than that, he is not available anywhere. So it's a very, very good people thinking how to convert his ideas, your idea into business. Ask your questions. Okay. So let me welcome Dr. K. Subramanian on board with Yespeopletainment. Thank you so much, sir. It's a privilege to be on board with you, to go on live on this Sunday evening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me and for having me on board for this webinar.
Okay, sir. Let's start. Questions. Audiences are joining. So I want to understand, we want to understand your journey. You are to Chennai, your journey from scientist in GE, researcher in GE to starting up your own startup in Chennai. What is this journey all about? How it started?
Sure, yeah. So let me maybe back up a little bit and also tell you why I became a scientist in the first place. So when I was sitting at IIT once, and I was doing my bachelor's degree there, and I was doing my project. Everyone has to do a final year project. Doing my project in robotics, and I was sitting in a lab where I was working on various robots and all that. This is back in 1994, 95, so quite a while ago. And someone who came up to me and said, this was the same lab where a movie was shot. Specifically, it was a Kamal Hassan movie called Vikram. And he said he remembered the lab for that reason, right? So it kind of hit me as to how something like research, and again, I was doing some research in robotics, how that needs to connect to people, right? And people remember always the connection. In this case, that person remembered a movie shooting, and that is why he remembered the lab in the first place. Right? So that kind of struck a chord on me, that technology has to eventually reach the people. So then I went on to the US to Cornell, and I did a PhD there. And when I went to Cornell, I realized the importance of multidisciplinary fields. Right? Until then, uh, I was kind of, we all think at the back of our mind that technical disciplines are compartmentalized. In the sense, you're either a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer or a chemical engineer or whatever. Right? But then when I went to the US, I realized that the disciplines are not compartmentalized at all. In the sense, there's a lot of value in cross disciplinary expertise. So what I mean by that is if you know multiple disciplines, if you're a mechanical engineer and an electrical engineer. So they have the saying that innovation happens at the intersection of disciplines. So if you know more than one field, it turns out that you can invent nicer. You can actually, the sparks will fly in the sense that you can come up with more ideas for a given problem. And if you know more than two fields, then even more sparks will fly. Right, so that's what inspired me. So I actually switched from mechanical to electrical engineering when I went to the US. The specific reason I switched was because I was interested in this field called, well, broadly speaking, micro and nanotechnology, where you talk about very small machines, machines that are so small that they go inside a computer chip. So I literally mean something that looks like a computer chip on the outside, but inside you have mechanical moving parts, just like a machine. Right? So if you zoom into that chip, you won't see electronic circuits, you will see moving parts. Right? So that was a technology that went across so many disciplines, electrical, mechanical, materials, physics, you name it. Right? So that was something that excited me a lot, and I did my PhD in that field. And I still stand by the fact that people who learn multiple disciplines actually have a very interesting career after that. So I did my PhD at Cornell, and then so PhD is obviously research. You have to find a few new things in your PhD. You have to publish your work. You have to write a thesis. After that, obviously, most people look for a career in research because you spent a lot of time in research. And what I did was I was particularly interested in research, as I said in the beginning, in research that reaches the people. Right? So it should not be something where if you look at the stereotype of a scientist, like you see in the movies and all that, the scientist is somebody with a French beard and glasses sitting in a corner doing something that he or she likes to do, right? Which the common people may not understand. So that's not the stereotype I wanted to work on. I wanted to do something, as I said, that is real. So I wanted to join industrial research. Right? And what is the meaning of industrial research? Industrial research is where, again, it's as simple as research done by industry as compared to research done by colleges. So why would industry do research? Industry would do research ultimately to make money. All right. So what they would do is they would kind of work in reverse. They would not invent something and then try and sell it. What they would do is they would see what the market wants. They would see what is sellable, what the consumers want, right? And once they understand that, they would work in reverse to see now to meet that requirement on the market, what needs to be invented. In other words, if you invent that, then already there is a market for it because you started with the market in the first place. So that is a key difference between the common conception of research and how industry does research. Right? There are other differences in the fact that, just as I said, industrial research is extremely multidisciplinary. It's extremely product oriented, which means that when you invent something, it is not just something you see in a lab. You have to worry about many factors. When you invent something, you have to worry, of course, about technology, but also about cost, who's going to manufacture it, where are the materials coming from, is it available in India, is it available in other countries, right? All those questions wrap into research. right? Because commonly research people think of as just as an idea and then some experiments in the lab, but it's much, much, much beyond that. Because as I said, research finally has to see the light of day. It has to hit a market through a real application at the right cost. Only then is the research successful. So for that reason, I joined GE as a scientist, right? And it was a huge research lab in the US with about 1,000 to 2,000 scientists of all disciplines sitting in one place. It was a very exciting time because all of the business units of GE would come to us, would come to the central research lab and tell us what is coming down the line in terms of their vision for new technology. And once they explained explain that to us, we will work, as I said, in reverse and figure out, okay, to have a certain new technology launched in a certain time frame, this year or today, what research needs to be started. So that is our job as scientists, right? So then we would execute that research program and actually invent that technology. And what I did was at GE was, well, actually several exciting things. I used to work, as I said, on micro and nanotechnology. I made various kinds of sensors. I worked on a particular project on switches. Very, very exciting time. Also because at that time, GE was an extremely diverse company. They were into medical systems, plastics, um, uh, aircraft engines, industrial systems. So many different, widely diverse businesses, and they would all come to us and say, this is what is coming down the line in terms of next generation technology. And we could propose our ideas as well. Right? So they're very enriching environment. What I wanted to do after that is I wanted to come back to India and expand that concept. So what was happening within GE was it was GE's own research lab, their own scientists who worked for them exclusively, who used to serve the technology needs of their own businesses. But I want to go take it to the next step. So after I came to India, I wanted to set up a research organization where we do research for anybody who wants us to do research. We do research for the whole wide world, for any industry who wants to come to us and say, we want to invent something. So in other words, we become the extended research lab of many other companies, right? So companies large, medium, and small of all sizes have come to us where they have said, this is our vision, this is what we want to invent, this is a new technology, new product we want to launch. But we don't have a research team to do this. Or we have a research team, they're busy doing something else. Right? So we do it for them. We become the research team, we become the research lab, and we invent things for them. So this was my journey, right? So the journey is part business, part patriotic, if you will, in the sense that as a business opportunity, there is almost no industrial entity in India which does this kind of service, right? Where we become the research lab of other people. As a patriotic intention, the goal is maybe someday we will highlight India as a destination for research. Because India is known as a destination for many things, like IT, for instance. But do people think of India as a destination for new technology, for inventing things? Probably not today so much, right? So we want to hopefully in the next few decades change that. Obviously, that can't be something you can change overnight, but that is our goal, and that is what we do.
Okay, wonderful cause, wonderful thought process. Journey from New York to Chennai with the cause, with the patriotism, of course, the business in India. So my next question is, sir, we are not from the research background, my audience and I. We are common people. Maybe whatever you do research in your lab, it will come to us at the end as an end customer. So please make us understand, share some examples of innovations. Like, do I need to be a researcher, scientist, then only I can innovate, or how I can contribute, or can you share some examples of innovations?
Sure. I think it's a great question. So I think everybody, including yourself, including the audience that's joined us, likes to watch movies, right? So why do we like to watch movies? Everybody actually has a different reason if you ask them. Some people like the story, some people like the music, some people like the action, some people like the comedy. So there are no so many aspects to why people would like to watch movies, but most people like to watch them. Now, if you actually think about what makes a movie click, uh, there used to be in the olden days where uh, uh, you could have a movie with only just good music. It need not have had other good elements in it, like action or even a story or good story or whatever, right? And it would actually click in the box office. But today, times have changed. Today, if a movie has to work, you need multiple elements actually coming together. You need, for example, music and a story and action. Maybe you need, for example, like what Jackie Chan did, you need comedy and action coming together. So people are reinventing the way they tell stories, right? It's the same with innovation. Gone are the days where you can actually be very successful innovating only in one field. So you have to intersect. You have to combine the knowledge of different fields. So if you look at modern cars, for instance, self-driving cars is what's coming up next, right? You need not just the mechanical systems, you need to integrate sensors, which is a discipline by itself. You need artificial intelligence because the car needs to read the sensors and have some basic intelligence on what is happening on the road. And then finally, the mechanical systems is what will drive the car. So many disciplines coming together. So I'm trying to use the movie example to explain that there is a parallel everywhere. The whole world is moving to areas where you intersect multiple things to actually be successful. So with that, what would be a few examples of innovation, right? So I'll maybe two or three examples. Some things that are very relatable to people. There was one party that came to us and said, "Can you invent the opposite of a microwave?" So this is something that everybody is used to microwave oven. It's a box. You open it. You keep something inside. You set 2 minutes, and you get something piping hot, right? But if you think about it, there is no
Yes.
solution where there is a box where you open it, keep something inside it, set 2 minutes, and you get it very chill. So there is no solution to do that. So if you want to chill something in an extremely fast time, there is no appliance. So if you think about it, it's actually a very good idea. So what that person meant was if he or she had a device like this, there is a market for this because people would probably want to buy something like this. Because even if you have a fridge and if you have a very cold freezer and if you keep a glass of orange juice, a can of beer, it will take about 2 hours to actually chill, right? So you can't do it faster than that, right? So this is an example of innovation, something that is not there, but the consumer probably wants because there is a market for it, or at least you can create a market for it. Maybe people don't know they want it yet, but once it's there, they will start buying it. So this is real innovation. This is something that doesn't exist. Nobody knows how to do it today. Not something you can go buy in the market. There is no direct technology that is available to do this. So again, a simple appliance level example. But there are so many examples of innovation. For example, if you think about um, cooking at home, right? If you think about
Yes.
one of the time-consuming steps in the cooking process, right? Let me take a universal example because I think you have audience throughout India and perhaps a few abroad as well. At least an Indian example where let's take chapatis. Okay, so if you want to make
Okay.
chapatis, you have to knead the dough, you have to roll using a rolling pin, and then you have to make the chapatis, and then you have to put it in the tawa for the actual cooking, right? So
Okay.
for some reason, people have invented a press for puris, but they haven't invented one for chapatis. Simple example, right? What if you could innovate
Yes.
and just like a puri press, if you could invent a chapati press? And I would say personally, from having actually done this, that the rolling step is the most time consuming step of this, because the batter you can, the dough you make once, does you don't have to make it every time for every chapati, right? But the rolling you have to do one for every single chapati, and the cooking actually happens in parallel on the
Every
tawa, so that does actually doesn't take much time, right? So if you could invent something to solve an everyday problem where you have a press of the right size, and for a chapati, if you actually think about it, it's very important to get a uniform thickness. Otherwise, it won't puff up. The thickness should be same all over the circle. If it's thinner in one place, thicker in the other place, puris are a little more forgiving. So, so you'll have to keep that in mind when you're designing a press for the chapati. So a conventional press where you're pressing on one end, if you know what I mean, actually won't work because that end will become thinner, the other end will be thicker, right? So solving that problem for an
yes.
everyday person who's cooking in the kitchen will be a big deal. And there is no solution that exists today. That is also innovation, right? Another example, everyday example, just to make it relatable, is how do you solve the traffic problem in Indian cities? Now, of course, with the COVID situation, we don't have a traffic problem, but very soon, I think when the lockdown ends,
Yes.
we will very soon have a traffic problem. And people living in any major city in India would realize that it's not a simple problem to solve, right? So if you pose this problem to most people, you will get conventional solutions as a response. Okay, you will say build bigger roads, wider roads, better roads without potholes so that people can move faster, better signaling systems so that people don't accumulate in any of the intersections. So those will be the conventional answers, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, we have to keep doing that to improve our traffic situation. But when I pose this problem to an audience, a college audience to be specific, with an innovative bent of mind, I had asked them to think differently, right? And I actually gave them a few clues as well, because there was one instance when somebody from Europe actually had visited us when I was in Bangalore specifically, and Bangalore, I think all of us know, has a very exceptional traffic problem. So he actually was quite
Yes.
impressed with Bangalore traffic. Believe it or not, he was very impressed. He was saying that the fact that we don't have,
Impressed.
yes, impressed. So he was saying that the fact that we don't have a well-disciplined lane system is the reason that we can pack so many vehicles in the road. If we had a disciplined lane system, if we actually drew the lines and said here are only 4 lanes, you have to have vehicles one behind the other in each lane, like it is in foreign countries, then you cannot pack so much traffic in the same road. Okay. So there is a merit to not having a lane system. There is a merit to not having discipline. Okay. So that is one way of thinking differently. So I gave this example to the students and asked them to brainstorm how you can very differently solve the traffic problem. Okay. Not in a conventional way. Conventional solutions everybody knows, and the government is probably working on it also. Building a metro, for example, is a conventional solution where fewer people will take a car to drive on the road. Okay. So there were two very interesting answers that came out. One of them was switch off all the traffic signals. Okay. Because the idea behind that was, see, conventionally you would think that if more efficient traffic signals, you can regulate the traffic better, it will be more efficient. But India is different. So you may have noticed occasionally when there is a power cut at the traffic signal, that all the traffic signals are off, you may have noticed that there is no crowding anywhere in that intersection. People somehow find their way. People come, they slow down, they see if there is any other vehicle at the intersection. If there is no vehicle, they just move. Right? But they have the sense to slow down and prevent accidents there. Right? So it is actually possible that if you go think backwards and say that I don't want traffic signals at all, right? Then you may have actually more free flow of traffic, and no accumulation of traffic at major junctions, and that actually may improve the traffic situation. Second idea that came up was a very interesting idea. The students actually said that if you are in a crowded street, if you want to get ahead, right, what you will do is you will use your shoulder to push people aside, and then you will try to get ahead in the crowd through the street. Again, very Indian example, right? The question was, why can't we do the same thing with traffic? Right? Why don't you, so let's say you're driving a car and you see a gap between two cars in front of you. You're afraid to enter that gap because you know your car is going to be damaged. It's going to be hit. You also know the car of the other person is also going to be damaged. But if that fear is not there, if you could build your car out of materials where they don't scratch, they don't dent, and they are kind of flexible to a point, just like people, just like in a crowd, you can push people and they don't dent, they don't scratch. Right? Just like that, if you can push vehicles around, then you can actually pack a lot more vehicles in the same road. So what they've done is they've shifted this from a road traffic problem to a car material problem. How do you build a car with a different material? That's innovation, right? I know these ideas are crazy, they may work, they may not work, but they are different enough that they merit some thought process behind them, right? So it may not work in exactly this form, but for example, the idea of making a car using a body material that does not scratch or does not dent, I think is a very powerful idea, right? There will be a far fewer insurance claims because most insurance claims today are because some part of the body has been damaged, right? So a flexible car, flexible to a point, it can't be totally flexible. Flexible car may actually work wonders in the Indian situation, right? I'm sure you live in Delhi, in the Delhi area. So how many cars do you actually see that don't have a scratch? Almost zero, right? Every car at every point,
Zero.
some point in its life, yeah, zero. Some point in its life has scratched,
Yes.
right? Right. But if you could find a material, right, and in road conditions, in impact, it doesn't scratch or dent, then you have an innovation, right? So these are examples of innovation. And maybe one more final example, just to give you a diversity of examples, right? I live in Chennai. We have a fairly serious water problem. Not this year, but this year is totally fine. But last year we had a pretty serious water problem because it hadn't rained for some time. So the problem is we are dependent on rains for water, and rains is not something that we can predict, right? So an innovative solution to that problem, or rather an innovative question that we should pose is, how do you sustain a major city in terms of water without depending on rains at all? Right? It sounds crazy when I first posed that question, right? So then a few answers will come up, with the first answer being desalination, which is today a well-known answer, because at least as far as Chennai is concerned, we live on the coast. So there is abundant water supply. Unfortunately, it's salt water. Desalination technology is available. There are pluses and minuses, but yes, the technology is available. So there is a way to get fresh water, right? There is now today another very interesting technology that people are working on. It's not very cost effective yet, but it's very interesting. What people do is they simply use the humidity in the air. And if you've been to Chennai, you will know it's a very humid place because it's on the coast. The humidity in the air, which basically comes from evaporation from the sea, right? If you can condense that humidity and make water literally from the air, then you get clean water anywhere, anytime, without a water source. So it's like your water filter, right? Your AquaGuard or whatever Kent or whatever brand you have, where you connect an inlet hose and you get water at the outlet. So this would be a box that looks like that with no inlet at all, only gives you outlet of water. And how does it work? Just like an air conditioner, where it condenses the air. If you see, every air conditioner is actually, there is a little tube that comes out of it where water is flowing out of it. It happens because when the air is cooled, the air cannot hold the moisture comes out of the air. So the humidity comes out of the air, and that humidity has to be expelled. In the case of an air conditioner, that extra water is useless. But here, it's the same device, different function, where you don't want to cool necessarily, but you want to extract the humidity out of the air. And you will be quite surprised that the calculations show that there is so much humidity in the air that you can easily sustain that. If you can make your technology, your device cost effective, right? That's the only thing. The technology works, question is cost, right? So many forms of innovation. And it need not be something very high tech. It need not be something to do with gadgets, which is what people think of as research today. Right? Gadgets are fine, but there is a lot of research innovation that happens beyond gadgets. Right? But I've given you a few consumer level examples, which I think people will relate to. So innovation is just
Yes.
thinking differently and solving a problem which sounds very impossible or crazy at first. But there is a solution waiting out there for people to find.
Okay, so well said. You explained it well. People like me would understand. So once upon a time, AC was a luxury, but today AC is a necessity in every household. So one day, this converting converting water from humidity will be also necessity in coming future. I guess that is what innovation is all about. I have few Bangalore friends. I think they should not complain about traffic hereafter after listening to you. Okay, so let's move on with the next question. So many people come and talk to me or discuss with me. Like, see, I have ideas. I have a new business ideas. I'm very excited about it. But how do I predict whether it is a success idea or whether my business will be a failure? How do I predict the success, whether the idea is going to make money or not?
Okay, so I am going to just go back to that movie example because I think people relate to it, right? So why would when I make a new movie, how do I know whether it will work or not? How do I know whether it will be a hit at the theaters or not? I don't. It's almost impossible to predict, right? But there are ways to do it.
Yes.
As I said, one of the methods is to realize that movies today are very interdisciplinary things. What we call masala, right? Which is the combination of spices.
Masala.
Yeah, so you need to make masala movies with the right combination of spices. In other words, where the spices are, as I said earlier, action, music, comedy, horror, whatever you genre, right? That the strength of the story, so many aspects, so many spices are there. And I'm again talking about Indian movies here. So if you can mix those spices in the right proportion, then you can be fairly sure the final dish will work, right? So that kind of applies for technology also. Okay, so one thing is, are we mixing the right technologies in the right combination? Right. For example, as I said, I gave the self-driving car example. You can make better and better and better cars, but you have to think of the next discipline. Can I introduce artificial intelligence? Can I introduce sensors? Can I introduce further intelligence, like if I get a flat tire, can it auto repair itself? So many things beyond the basic function of a car, which is to move you from point A to point B, right? So that is where the innovation comes. So the first question to ask yourself is, are you innovating in something that is truly unique, where it is giving a new value to the customer? Electric cars are like that, right? What is the value it is giving? It is giving a value where the cost per kilometer, the running cost of the car, is almost nothing. Almost nothing, right? It is bringing the running cost from, I think, 20, 30 rupees, depending, of course, on the kind of car, to maybe below a rupee, right? So that is the huge value that it provides. And that value, now you're translating into an innovation, right? So I think the other mantra to do this is to uh, ask the right question. In the sense you mentioned, your question was that people come to you asking what I have an idea, I don't know if that idea will work, right? I think the question is wrong. I think people should not say that I have an idea, I don't know if the idea will work. People should ask the question, what does the market want? And after finding that out, let me create the idea. Right now, if let's say I want to,
Okay.
for example, let's say the next generation cell phone should be able to measure the quality of air pollution. So today it measures heart rate, it measures steps, it measures so many interesting things, right? But I also want to know the quality
Yes.
of air pollution where I live. So I want to know if I'm living in a safe place, if I can breathe the air. So I want the sensors which measure air pollution also into my cell phone, because you have to keep adding all these stuff into the next generation cell phone. So the question first is not whether your idea is good, but question is, can you do a market survey? Can you understand whether people want this feature in the first place? Whether they will be willing to pay more for this feature? Is this something that's valuable to them? Right? So as I said, to just to repeat, the question is not whether I have an idea and whether it will work. The question is, before I even came up with the idea, have I studied the market to understand what the market wants, and have I consequently created an idea out of that? Right? So it's the very opposite question. Right? Most likely, if you have an idea that's your pet idea, it is a very remote chance the market will actually want it. Right? So it really need to study the market.
Okay. So
That is the name of
before
it.
Okay, so before even start thinking of starting a restaurant business or creating some cell phone or coming up with an app, I should understand the market. I should study the market, whether my idea will work out in the market or not. That is the first step. Go on with the business. Am I correct, sir?
Correct. Exactly. Like, for example, you want to start a Mexican restaurant
Okay.
in a certain neighborhood. Are there people who are interested in eating Mexican food first? Right? So the answer may not be a clear yes or no. It may be something in between also. And you may end up starting an Indian Mexican fusion restaurant. Right? So the market data will always lead you to the right solution.
Okay. So, guys, whoever watching right now, you can ask your questions. It can be any questions. Don't be shy. Write down your questions in the comment so that I can ask Dr. Subramanian. Um, okay, I will proceed with my next question, sir. So we are talking about innovations, and okay, I have my existing business. I have started my business. It's been 4 years. It's running. 5 years down the line, how innovation can help my business? Innovation is necessary or not? 5 years down the line in my business.
Yeah. I think people are realizing, every business is realizing that without innovation, they probably won't survive. It is a fact. It is a probably, I don't know if it's a fortunate or unfortunate fact, but it's a fact. Without innovating, what happens is competition grows. There always will come up where other people are doing the same very similar line of business. You have to keep dropping your prices in order to compete. Otherwise, nobody will buy your goods or services. And you will get to a point where you cannot make any profit anymore. So unless you think of something different, your business is not going to grow. What will happen is the growth will slow, then it will stagnate, and then you will actually be getting into a loss. So this is true of pretty much every single business that you can think of, right? And when I say every single business, I am talking about everything. So, for example, the classic example is Kodak's business in film, right? Somewhere in the mid 90s, digital cameras overnight, almost overnight, came into the scene, right? And the people who were used to swear by film had no choice but to switch. So companies like Kodak, which were basing their entire business on films and developing and printing and all that, had no choice. They just had to go, right? So the very classic example of
Yes.
people who were living in a dream world saying that we are the market leaders, and they were saying, and they just were not, they were innovating within their discipline. They were not doing radical breakthrough innovation. You need both. You need to incrementally innovate to improve your product. You also need to do radical innovation to think completely different. Right? Why are today, if you take a much simpler example, why are barbers going out of business slowly? Right? Even though it is such an essential service, because there are very much more interesting salons, beauty parlors coming up. Right? So even the business of cutting hair has innovated and evolved into into something which gives you far more value to the customer. Even something as simple as cleaning up your space, adding an air conditioner, people will go there instead of going to a regular barber. People don't mind paying the extra. So innovation from small things to radically new things, right? Look at the business of buying grocery items, right? It has moved from small shops to large delivery firms like your Amazon Pantry and Big Basket, right? So you're without even realizing it so much, our habit of buying groceries has changed. And these companies have made money in the innovation on the service side, right? They're still delivering the same rice, dal, vegetables, cereal, whatever you want to buy, right? There is no difference in that, right? But the convenience, the service model has changed. That is the innovation, right? And they allow you to use electronic payments, right? So you don't need to keep the change, you don't need to keep the cash, you don't need to get out of your house, right? So those are the values they've identified for the customer. And without even thinking about it too much, we have entered that, right? And of course, they have added a huge innovation in pricing
Yes.
because pricing is a big deal because everybody is price sensitive. The Even the local street corner store probably sells whatever you buy at MRP value. But these people, because they are able to not have retail showrooms, they don't have to rent a space in the city, in your street. They are able to have a centralized warehousing facility, which is in a more remote place and therefore cheaper. And they are able to significantly save on costs, and they are able to pass it on to you as a consumer, where the price is actually below MRP. Right? I in fact went to my local street shopkeeper at once, and because I almost don't buy from him anymore, unfortunately. And when I just bought something and he charged me MRP price, I was actually shocked. So gone are the days where I was telling him that people don't charge you MRP anymore. Things have changed. The business model of selling groceries has changed. And people expect that you actually meet a lower price and actually give you a far more convenience. Right? So all of these examples of why if you don't innovate, and just like the local street corner shop, you will probably be out of business in a while. Whether it's right or wrong is a different discussion. But this is how the world works.
Exactly, sir. Thanks to these innovations, so these 3 months during pandemic, we survived because of these innovations. And yes, I worked in Bangalore. I worked for Kotak also. Overnight, they went bankrupt. I remember that I had to enter. They are bankrupted. In O2C process, I was when I was working in Bangalore. I was dealing with Kotak. I remember that. And Nokia is one of the another example who did not do much innovations, where they thought they are the leaders of cell phones, so they are gone out of the market. So a lot of in business to survive further. Thank you so much for the insight, sir. So next question is my very personal question. I always feel this as an Indian compared to ancient India. Is our current generation still inventing new things? We don't have an Indian search engine like a Google or Yahoo. We don't have Indian automobiles. We don't have much of the things we are using right now. All are from imported. All are imported. Why we are not able to invent much in the new generations, like last 60, 70 years, why we were not able to invent anything?
Okay. Another great question.
What was
And I think I have the answer to this question because I have pondered this over the years myself. And I have literally come up with what I believe is the right answer to this. When I was in the US, and fortunately or unfortunately, the answer to this came from an American. Okay. To why the Indians were not innovative.
oh
As they should. Okay. But again, the answer was powerful enough that I think it was right. So, uh, so what? So I lived in the US for about 15 years, and the same Indians living in other countries are actually innovating. Okay. So what actually changed, right? Why can't we do the same thing from India? What allows us to do radical innovation when the same people who have grown up in India, studied in India, go to another country and then start working there? Right? There are a few factors which do this, but if you ask me, in that 15 years in the US, uh, what I the only thing I actually learned. Yeah, I learned technology from textbooks, from few people. All that is there, okay, which I could have learned in India also. But what I actually learned is confidence. What I came back with after 15 years is the only thing I would say, which finally stood with me, is confidence. And I fundamentally believe that most Indians, I won't generalize, but most Indians are not confident enough to take the risk and go and start a company or a business where their product is radically innovative. I think the talent is there. The brains are definitely there. There is no doubt at all. Uh, we, I think we are also learning teamwork because without teamwork, these things don't happen. Big projects don't happen. But fundamentally, I think, uh, and I'm going to blame the British a little bit here because I think after a few centuries of British rule, we were systematically, the confidence was systematically removed from us. We were systematically delegated to positions that were more clerical, that did not require a lot more risk taking or whatever it was, right? And in that climate, if you can imagine somebody like the Tatas actually starting their own business and running it, it was a phenomenal achievement. Doing the same thing today, I mean, it's still an achievement, but doing it during the pre-independence times is much more of an achievement, right? So that confidence was systematically removed. And we have what, about two generations after independence now? And I think the confidence is coming back, right? And as I said, an American was one actually who told this to me, and he was discussing British rule of India, and he said the British have taken a lot of things away from India, right? Kohinoor diamond, you can name a lot of material things, but he said the real thing they took away from you is the confidence, because if once you have that, you can do anything. You can actually bring everything back, right? You can actually create value once more by starting the right companies. You can start manufacturing, you can start inventing. Everything will come with confidence. So hopefully, and this is a plea to the whole audience who's listening to this, is be confident, take risks. That is the only way. But take risks in an educated fashion. It does not should not be foolishness. It should be real risk after understanding what can go wrong, what can go right. I hope that answers your question.
wow, fantastic, sir. All this time here, I even thought in a different angle as well. I discussed with my friends and they were just laughing at me. And you gave a very so guys, please take risk after after understanding the risk. Go for it, and that's what Subramanian has to say to you. Guys, who are watching, please ask your questions, and he's very willing to answer your personal questions if you have something in your mind. I'll move on to the next question, sir. Sir, you have already so you have applied for patent more than 50 researching. The researches you have done, more than 50 patent application you have already filed. So you are the right person to ask these questions. Can you explain intellectual property? Is it useful to patent it?
Yeah. So just to clarify your statement, I've actually applied for many more, but the 50 number is 50 plus is what has actually been issued. So usually there is a ratio between what's applied and what's issued because a few are rejected also, which is a good thing. So 50 plus is the actual issued number, but that's fine. That's just a number. And so intellectual property, which is patents and a few other forms of intellectual property like know-how and things like that, is a very debatable topic. Okay, so there is a lot of merit to patenting. There are patent laws to protect you. It basically incentivizes you to innovate in the sense that since you can protect your innovation, since nobody else can copy you for typically 20 years in most countries, right? That is the life of a patent. After 20 years, people are actually legally allowed to copy it. So since you are the sole owner of that invention for 20 years, it is like an incentive for you to innovate. So patenting in one argument actually fosters innovation. But there is an equal downside to patenting, which is because you're preventing other people from using your innovation for that 20 years. It is also stifling innovation for other people because they can't use what you invented and build on top of that, right? So it works both ways. So the more short-term viewpoint is yes, if you have really believed that you have invented something interesting, it is probably worth patenting it because it will drive your business. Nobody else can copy it for a certain period of time. It's actually not 20 years because it takes a few years for the patent to be issued. So that eats up into that 20 years. So you end up with about 14, 15 years effectively. So as I said, if you really think that this is of value, like I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a lot of talk about electric vehicles today. People are uh, people are saying that the normal petrol engine, diesel engine will phase out at least by about 2050, and then by the time all vehicles will be electric, and in between there will be a period where there will be hybrids where you will have battery operated and petrol diesel engine operated together as a transition phase. So if let's say, and the biggest issue with electric vehicles is the range, because even the best batteries today cannot go very far. Okay, the battery technology is not at all advanced. I mean, there is so much left to invent in battery technology. You cannot go, for example, I travel from Chennai to Bangalore, which is about 350 kilometers. When I fill petrol in my car, I can go and come back in one fill, which is about 700 plus kilometers. But electric vehicles can't even do a fraction of this, right? So if you have an idea for a new battery technology, which can take you a longer distance, and or if the battery can do a fast charge, right? Fast charge is the other major issue with battery today. If you charge your cell phone, it takes 1 to 2 hours, right? But to fill petrol in your vehicle, it takes 5 minutes. And filling petrol is like charging your tank. You go from empty to full. It's equivalent to charging, right? So where is 1 to 2 hours? Where is 5 minutes, right? So if you have ideas on these two major aspects of batteries, one is can you go longer, much longer? Can you do a much faster charge, bring it down from 1 hour to 5 minutes from zero to full charge? Then you have a huge winner, and you probably should be patenting something like that. Okay, and if you have an investor who's going to invest in your business, you probably look for whether you have patent protection. So patent protection is preventing other people from following your tech or executing your technology. So, on the other hand, there are people who patent without truly realizing the implication, because patenting is also expensive. You need to spend on the lawyer fees and the patent fees and all that. So, you have to also figure out if your infringement of your patent can be detected. If it cannot be detected, there is no use patenting. Okay. So let's say you invent a new way to make vanilla ice cream. Okay. And somebody is selling vanilla ice cream on the street. You don't know if he used your method or some other method to come up with my vanilla ice cream. Right? So there's no way in that case to detect whether that guy copied you or not. Because finally the product is vanilla ice cream and it tastes just like vanilla ice cream. There's no way you can tell whether this is a copy of your method or if some other method was used to make the same vanilla ice cream. So in those cases, you'll have to really think through and see if patenting is worth spending the money. Because there is no real benefit, you can't really sue or legally take action against anybody else. Even if you believe they copied it, there's no way to prove it. Right? So again, all aspects of this. But if you have a radical idea and if you can detect if somebody has infringed or copied, then I would say it's probably worth patenting.
Okay. So if somebody has knowledge about battery or inventing something, go for a patent because battery is the future.
Correct.
Okay. So, sir, let's move on to my next question. Like, can individuals like me or any companies in India can approach you to work in your as their R&D lab? What do projects typically cost? What is the budget?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. So yes. So very briefly to describe our R&D services, the way we operate is we have scientists and labs in various disciplines. So we have scientists in electronics, in power, in sensors, in chemistry, in materials, in AI, and in physics. So in so many different disciplines, we have scientists, but scientists who think industrially, in the sense who think towards a product. Right. So in other words, the goal of their research is not just to make something cool, but also to make something that can be marketed, can come out at the right cost, etc. Right. So yes, most welcome for people to approach us. We work with large companies, mid-sized companies, startups, individuals, all of that, right? For individual startup companies, etc., they just don't have an R&D lab in-house. So if they want to invent anything, I think they will need to approach someone like us, and we can actually truly effectively do it for them. If but for a large company, they may have an internal R&D lab, but most often the case is those scientists are busy doing something else. They may not have time to look at certain projects, so hence they outsource. So for all sorts of reasons, people come to us for being their R&D team. But in summary, I would say that if someone has an idea or a vision, right? All they need is a vision or an idea, and of course they need some money. And if they have those two, there is no excuse not to invent anymore. There is no excuse, because there are people like us to take that vision, to take that budget, and literally translate it into a new invention, a new technology, a new product for them. Right? So there's no excuse to say that we don't have scientists, we don't know how to do R&D, we don't have labs. Right? Doesn't work anymore, because the ecosystem for invention. When I say ecosystem, I'm talking about patents, I'm talking about people like us, I'm talking about also professors with the French beard and glasses. But all of that is important to, in sum total, actually invent in India. Right? And if you think of schemes like Make in India, you can't just start making something. You will have to develop it first. Right? You'll have to invent it, develop it first. So this is a step that actually precedes Make in India. And the government is going to push for Make in India for sure. More of self-sustenance, more of making things here after the corona situation. Right?
Okay. So, guys, if you want to innovate something, even you have idea, you just need a lab, you need scientists, you can approach Dr. Subramanian. Sir, how they can approach you, in which platform? Like,
Yeah, so perhaps you could share my email and contact information after this talk. Feel free to share my
okay.
WhatsApp and the email also. And also the website is innovation-powergear.com. Innovation-powergear.com. That is a company website, which of course has a
Okay.
contact thing. And I think I missed answering one of your questions about cost. So I think I should also just briefly talk about that. There are various flavors of research projects. Minimum would cost about 50-60 lakhs, I would say, and it would run for about a year, maybe 10 months to a year. That is the bare minimum of budget and time that it takes to do R&D. Maximum sky is the limit. We have projects which could run several crores spanning a few years' time because they would be more high-end kind of innovations. Right, we are also starting to work with the government because defense labs, for example, are trying to indigenize a lot of the equipment that they are importing today. And if all those can be redeveloped, reinvented in India, and eventually manufactured in India, it's a huge savings for us.
There is a huge market waiting for people who have some ideas and they're ready to invest some money to patent their ideas, convert into innovations. So you can approach Dr. Subramaniam and he can help you guys, make money as well from the patent, from the new inventions as well. So, sir, yes, of course, when you where India is standing at the point of zero point 0.1 in innovations, or we are taking a few steps, first few steps towards innovations. Of course, you might face some hurdles. What are the challenges from the government side or from the your market area? What are the hurdles you face in your line of business in R&D?
Okay, so another great question. R&D is not an easy business. One is, of course, you need a lot of manpower, talent, well-paid talent to execute it. You need a lot of brains. But then on the customer side, uh, some customers are great. They have a vision, they have the budget, and that's all we need, right? So we become their extended R&D lab and we start working with them. So, for example, Boeing is one of our customers, and it's a huge matter of pride that from Seattle or from they outsource research to our place in Chennai, which means they believe that certain next generation aircraft technologies can actually come from here. Huge matter of pride. We certainly work with Indian companies as well. If you talk about the issues, yes, it's an uphill battle in certain ways to convince people to outsource something at the level of R&D, which for them is very close to their heart. So many people believe that R&D is something that they should only do internally. They should not leak out the information on what it is they are working on for the next generation technology. So there we do a lot of work in gaining their trust. We sign the right agreements, and we uh, promise confidentiality. We promise that the patent rights, whatever comes out of this new inventions that comes out of their project, will go to them. So we promise to convince them in many ways that we are literally seamlessly a part. We are just like their own R&D team. So there should not be an issue in outsourcing. That is one thing. Another issue we've come across is even if people have the money, okay, see, money is required. There is no question about it. But even if the money is available, many Indian companies don't allocate that money for research. Right? When I used to work in the US, what we used to do is at the end of every year, we used to have a planning session for the next year, where a certain pot of money will be allocated for research projects. Out of that, there will be sub-allocations. One portion will be allocated for short-term projects, another portion for medium-term projects, and a small portion for very long-term, high-risk projects, because you have to take some risk also, right? And we have found that in a lot of Indian companies, people don't actively plan and allocate. I'm not generalizing again, many companies do it, but majority don't. So if people can start planning, right, you should not suddenly think, okay, I want a new technology tomorrow. That's not going to happen. You have to plan 3 years, 5 years down the line. What product do I want to launch after 5 years? And that will decide my research budget for next year. Right? Unless you allocate that, what happens is you have to pull the money out of some other program, which again becomes a difficult issue. Right? So that is a major issue that we face. Another major issue we face in India is, again, boils down to the idea of taking risk, because R&D projects do fail. Not everything works, right? But that failure also has to be accepted. We do, given our experience, we can do a lot of techniques to reduce that failures to a very small number. Okay, but then it is still a fact. You're exploring some new technology. It might still fail. You never know. So what many people do is they don't invest in R&D. They just wait. When a foreign company has invented the technology that they are interested in, they go and buy that company or buy that technology. They acquire the rights. Many Indian companies work in this mode. I'm not saying there is anything wrong with this mode. It is fine to acquire new technologies, but I think you should have a healthy mix of acquiring technologies and your own internal R&D. You should do both. Because only when you do your internal research, internal innovation, there is some organic growth in the company. External acquisition, you spend much more money acquiring that technology versus what you would have spent in research, because somebody is selling you a mature technology. They have already spent a lot of money, they want to make more money on it. Right? So by doing that, you reduce your risk, but you spend a lot more. But by developing it internally, yes, the risk is higher, but you spend a lot less, but you also gain the knowledge, which is a big deal. And once you gain the knowledge on how to develop something, you can also develop future versions of that product. There's so many things you can do. You can develop offshoots of that technology. So many side effects are there, side benefits.
Okay. So, if I am 24, 25 age, it's better invest my money in R&D projects to get the patent so that it can go on generations to generations instead of if I am looking at a bigger picture, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, whoever out there looking for some serious business, serious innovations, go with your ideas, do some uh, research, do R&D, and then you can approach Dr. Subramanian as well to get a help and convert your ideas into innovation. So 5 years, 6 years down the line, you might end up having a patent which will go through your generations as a money making process. Okay, so sir, I won't say final questions, but kind of we are reaching the end of the session. Like, what is the future of R&D businesses, and how you plan to take it forward? Plus, what are your current project, the future projects are running with you, if you can share?
Yeah, I can share a few high level things. As I said, we've done some work for Boeing. Obviously, in the aerospace side, we broadly work in materials, in sensors, in some very interesting novel energy storage technologies. Uh, as I said, from the electric vehicle example, alternatives to today's batteries. We work with many automobile companies on so many aspects of automobiles, whether it's electric vehicles or whether it's conventional automobiles. There is always more innovation to be done. We work with energy companies, we work with biotechnology companies, we work with medical equipment people. You may know that almost no medical equipment is made in India today, and we want to change that. And the reason for that is actually a very simple and interesting reason. It's that a lot of the medical companies, the pharma companies, are very medical people. They are not engineers who can build machines, right? So you need both skills, right? If you want to understand the human body and make medical equipment to test something or treat something, you need to understand biology and you need to understand engineering to build the equipment, right? So I think our skill is very complementary to a lot of these companies who are into the biotech space. Okay. Um, yeah. So biotech, as I said, is a lot of biotech startups today filled with very good biology people, not instrumentation people who can build those biotech instruments. So that is where our partnership really works, right? So that's a very high level flavor. We also work in certain consumer level equipment. We work in robotics, small machines that can crawl into small spaces, do inspections, and come out where human beings can't go. Very, very diverse, right? We are not limited by the kind of industry we work. We are organized by technical disciplines. So when any industry comes to us, any individual comes to us, depending on what they want, we mix team of scientists. We create a team for that project. That's all we do, right? And then we execute that project within a certain given timeline, right? So how to take it forward? We are actually in a scale-up mode right now. Okay, so we are only this particular attempt. So I came back from the US about 10 years ago, and this is about 6 to 7 years old. This business, and we last 6 to 7 years we were intentionally conservative. We wanted to take on a few projects. We wanted to convince ourselves that the model works, that we can get the right talent in terms of scientists, and that we can deliver on time, that we can truly deliver innovation which satisfies the customer. Few months ago, we decided we are very confident about this. So we are right now actually attracting investment from investors who want to invest in this kind of a venture. We would imagine that they want to because the business potential looks very, very interesting. We have hired a consulting company who has already scoped out the size of the market, which is very big. And we don't want to just serve the Indian market, we want to serve the global market also. As I said, the vision is that anywhere in the world, when people think of inventing something, they should somehow think of India. So that is the grand vision. To realize that, of course, will take a long time, and there may need to be many more companies like us. One company, I don't think, can do it. So think of it like, for example, where an IT company like TCS, Infosys, and all was in the 1980s. So in the 1980s, when nobody really knew much about IT, these companies had a vision that India can become an outsourcing destination for IT. And they worked hard and they made it happen. 90s, 2000s, it actually happened. So we like to think of ourselves like in that phase, but in R&D and innovation. So we have that vision that India can be an outsourcing destination for R&D. And maybe in a decade or two, we may actually get there, right? You never know.
Yes, sir. Your growth will be in jet speed because yes, you said we are changing that confidence we are gaining back. So your speed of R&D business will go higher and higher in upcoming years. So my final question is, sir, I don't think so any audiences they are shy. I think today they are not asking. I think after I finish this interview, I might get a call with some questions. Maybe I'll text you, I'll WhatsApp you those questions. Sir, my final question is, I always believe and I ask every entrepreneurs I interact with, you might have some inspirations behind you, or who is your mentor? I know you're mentoring a lot of scientists out there who are developing researchers. You're mentoring out there, I know that, but who's your inspirations, who you consider as your mentor?
Okay. So I think I already kind of hinted this. I mentioned the Tata Group, who started huge businesses in India, Even Air India, I believe, was started by Tata originally before the government took over. And they did this at a time when it was not even a favorable climate to start businesses. So implicitly, I kind of consider them my role model. But if you think about it, the real answer to your question is the mentor is entirely my customer at this point. Because what we do is when I started this business, I honestly did not even know whether I should hire scientists and engineers in electronics or mechanical or something else, or I had no idea. So I actually went to my first customer and I asked that person how I should grow. So they kind of sat with me and then they said, here is all where you may see requirements for partnership, for R&D. Right? And they said, okay, to start with, you hire in certain areas of electronics, and then we can start from there. Right? So that is how I started, without with pretty much no clue. Because I cannot be, for example, like an IIT, which has all the departments and all the labs all the time. Right? We are an industry, we have to make profit, we have to be lean in our operations also. So we have to choose how we grow. And how we pick and choose depends entirely on what pull comes from the customers. So over time, we have grown into these projects, grown into these skills purely based on how the customers have guided us. So the customers have been a huge inspiration for us. They have literally sat down with us and guided us and told us this is how you need to grow. So ultimately, I would consider them as my current mentors, if you will. And I also have mentorship,
Okay.
not in an individual sense, but from my work experience at GE in the US, which was an incredibly diverse work experience where I acquired skills in so many disciplines. It was an unimaginable experience.
15 years of diversified culture and diversified mindset as well. You have worked, obviously, you have taken a lot of knowledge from there, 15 years of expertise from there to Chennai. I'm super glad. Only patriotism can do that. Sir, gladly we have a question from Kalidasan. He's from Coimbatore. He's one of my friends. Doctor, I'm very delighted to make your acquaintance in this forum. You have been touching the areas such as electric cars, AI, energy storage, and others. My question is, do you think there are gaps in the existing market for an efficient energy solution, storage solutions, especially in India? This is
Yeah,
his
so
question, sir.
very much. I think I already mentioned this. There is a huge gap, not just in India, in the whole world. Whoever cracks this energy storage problem, whoever can make a battery, so a battery that can store a lot more energy for a given size and can charge faster, I think will rule the world in some sense. Okay, it is a huge problem out there, and nobody truly knows how to crack it.
Huge problem.
It's a huge problem, and I would say
Right.
that uh, I would encourage Mr. Kalidasan to start innovating, think very differently. Right? I will give you a small hint.
Yes.
We worked on a problem for a customer where they didn't quite think about energy storage to start with, but they were more worried about the recharge time. Okay, so they wanted to put batteries inside their electric vehicles where they wanted to literally recharge the vehicle from zero to full charge in 5 minutes. Okay, today if you take the best lithium battery, you can do 0 to 80% in half an hour. Okay, that is the most expensive battery also. Okay, so you may not even want to put the most expensive battery in your vehicle. So your best solution for your application may you take even 1 hour, 2 hours. So to charge. Okay, but these people wanted 5 minutes of recharging time. Imagine, right? If you can get just your mobile from zero to full charge in 5 minutes, it's a big deal. That itself, then you're a winner in the market. Okay. Once you can crack mobiles, you can crack, then go to laptops, then you can go to electric vehicles. The sky is the limit. Okay. So we actually gave a solution for this. And I will give you a hint within confidentiality. So we just kind of did a complete rethinking of the charging process, because conventionally, again, this is innovation. Conventionally, when people want to charge something, they think of charging as the practice of plugging in their device into the wall outlet and waiting for the electricity to enter the battery and then charge. Okay. But you can get innovative. Charging does not have to be only this. Okay. What if you think of a cell phone which runs on a petrol engine? Again, sounds crazy, right? Which is why it is innovative. Right. And petrol engine doesn't have to be the size of a car or the size of a bike. Okay. A petrol engine can be a small vial, a few milliliters, a small vial, like a small syringe of petrol, which where there is space in your cell phone to refill that. Okay. And that little amount of petrol will cost you very little. Okay. The amount of cost will be nothing. But maybe you can use it in situations where you want to recharge very, very quickly. So there, the idea of recharge is not plugging in your cell phone into the wall outlet. The idea of recharge is to take a small dropper, like you fill ink in your pen, and to fill petrol in your little vial in your cell phone. That will take 30 seconds maximum. And when you fill that vial with petrol, and if your cell phone can actually run on petrol, eventually, of course, it has to convert petrol to electricity, and then it has to use that electricity. Then you actually implemented a way to recharge in 30 seconds, 0 to full charge in 30 seconds. Because whatever vial you fill with petrol on the back of your cell phone will be enough petrol to run you for the same length of time, for example, 1 day that a full charge will run you. So this will be extremely useful, for example, when you're traveling, there is no charging point or you don't have time to wait for 1 hour or 2 hours. So this is innovation. This is where you rethink, where you say charging, I will not accept that the conventional idea of charging is where you plug it into an outlet. I will rethink ways to charge this. Now that I have said this, I'm sure people here will start thinking in very different ways. For example, we have also worked on a project where we have proposed a battery where the idea of recharging is to remove one small metal plate and put a new metal plate. And when the battery runs, this metal plate gets spent in the process. The metal plate is very, very cheap. So when you just remove it and put in a new metal plate, at the same time as swapping out a SIM card, the new metal plate, the way the chemistry works, actually gives you as if you have a full charge. Right? So think very differently. Right? Same way, like Dr. Kalidasan asked, yes, there is a gap in the market for efficient energy storage. But think of a very, very different solution of rather than making a conventional battery with chemicals in it, think of some other solution is how I would push this problem. That is the only way you can solve it. I think if you try to make better and better lithium batteries, yes, that is good, but I don't think you're going to crack this problem in a big way.
Okay. So I think Kalidasan, you understood, you got whatever you want from the best. Oh, guys, that was amazing, right? Oh my God. What to say? He's amazing. Okay. This is what Yespeopletainment, everything all about.